Hi everyone, this is Emmy Peterson from Expat TV. I'm also the founder of The Bridge EC Relocation. Today I wanted to take a moment to quickly introduce you to Jane Nguyen, who's our lovely guest on Expat TV today. She's an author, speaker, and transformational relationship and dating coach. Jane's also the go-to girl for people who want to experience transformational change in their relationships. Using her signature feminine power coaching method in her programs, workshops, and retreats, Jane teaches strong, independent, and powerful women how to tap more into their feminine essence and shine from the inside and out to attract a man and a relationship that allows them to be all they can be. Jane is a proud author of her book Honeymoon Forever and a contributing author of no more than 3 other books that bring love, light, and inspiration to our world. So thank you to our lovely relationship coach, Jane, for being back with us on Expat TV. We've chatted about many topics before, and today we're going to talk about one of the possibly most challenging but also most important questions so far, which is long-distance relationships. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this. And I'm going to throw the first question out there.
Okay.
Why do people decide to do them? We all know that they're so hard.
It's a great question. I don't think there's specific answers to that because everyone is so different. But a lot of the time you couldn't help falling in love with someone and you just sort of found out that they didn't really live in the same country, or for some reason they have to relocate to another country for work or things like that. And, also with the changes in technology, it allows us to go globally when it comes to dating. And, there's a lot of, positive things around that. But at the same time, the downfall of that is dating someone from a different continent. And the challenges arise with a lot of this long-distance relationship is, first of all, you sort of miss someone and you can't really have a face-to-face conversation. You can't really cuddle. You can't really share with them about everything in your day. As much as you want to be on the phone with them or doing Skype, there was a sort of a limit to what you can share. It wasn't like you could just pick up the phone and go, you know what, you just want to go for coffee. Sex is sort of a challenge for a lot of long-distance relationship. You sort of miss that connection and the intimacy. There's a lot of challenges around long-distance relationship, and it really depends on the couples on how they plan out that stage and how they manage ongoing.
Yeah. One thing I find really cool, I mean, this is a big topic and I'm sure we're going to dive into a lot of different parts of it today. One thing I find that a lot of couples that I've met, and including my own experience, is that you don't really plan to get into a long-distance relationship. For many people, it kind of just happens, whether you're already together and the circumstances change quickly, like one of you has to move to another city or another country. Because let's not forget that long-distance can equally be, we're in Australia at the moment, it's a big country. If I was to live in Melbourne and my partner in Perth, that's a 3-4 hour flight. So it's reasonably far away.
Yeah.
So most people kind of just find themselves in the situation of a long distance relationship all of a sudden because they love the person, and very few people would probably be, rigorous enough to say, no, I'm not even going to get into it. I know some people like that. Most people, like you say, when love is involved,
they're quite flexible. Yeah,
you're like, oh, but I really love this person. I really want to get to know them, all that sort of stuff. So it's important to remember that long distance it has the same symptoms, however long the distance is. Obviously, it is a little bit different if you are a few hours away on a flight or if you're an hour's drive to the next town. So, Jane, if I find myself in a long distance relationship and I go, oh my God, how did this happen? What are some things other than going, great, I found a good person that I love and I want to be with? That's awesome. Now, how do I do this? What are some things that I can start thinking about from a mindset perspective so I don't go nuts?
Yeah. First of all, stay calm. Don't go, I guess, a lot of people get really, they caught themselves in this mess or these challenges, and they sort of get stressed out and they're trying to control everything that's actually out of their control. So first of all, I would say to stay calm, because as long as you communicate and plan out how are you going to do this sort of long distance relationship, how often do you call each other, and how much you want to share through the conversation. A lot of people want to know everything and the other person is too busy to share. So have that open conversation around what do you want to talk about, how do we manage, I guess, emotions. A lot of emotions arise when you sort of don't see the other person, like jealousy. You sort of don't know what they're doing. A lot of the time it's your own issue because, you sort of have that insecurities that someone may cheat on you. So you sort of got to work through these emotions and communicate. If you feel like I know we're supposed to have this conversation in like 2 days, but I really miss you. Can we have this phone call now? You sort of want to manage the time zone as well, because sometimes, say for example, I used to be in a relationship where the person was in Vietnam, I was here. It was only 4 hours difference, but you sort of think about 8 o'clock here was only 4 in the afternoon over there. They're still at work. And you sort of go think about, but if it's 8 o'clock for them after dinner, it would be 12 for me. So how do you sort of manage that and manage the expectation as well of, how do you, I guess, do you expect to visit each other often? You sort of expect a long-term commitment because you're doing this. You just going to have to be so open with each other about, I guess, as much as possible for me, it's about everything. Are you having an expectation of actually getting engaged, getting married in, 2 years' time, and where do you want to live? Because obviously, as much as you can manage the longest in relationship now, you sort of don't want to do it over 4 or 5 years' time. Yeah. So obviously there needs to be a plan, and some couple have the upfront conversation around, okay, where are we going? What's our plan? Others wait to get more serious and go, down a track 6 months, 12 months' time to have this conversation around, okay, I can't, stand the idea of us living like this anymore. Let's have a conversation around whether you're coming back here or I'm going over there, and manage your family expectation as well. Because for a lot of people, they have the circle, the friends here. So to sort of ask someone to leave everything behind to go to a different country is a big ask. And sort of have that compromise of maybe it's half the time there, half the time here. You just got to have that conversation.
This is really interesting because I can so relate to this topic, and something that really resonated with me was what you said about it's a big ask to get someone to come with you, and it most certainly is. And I work with relocators and expats all the time where one partner might have been offered a job or a study position or something that was basically too good to say no to. And whether they have been with the person for a long or a short time, what ends up happening is that the person who's coming along almost feel like they're forced to. Yeah. It's almost that feeling of, well, and then comes the doubt, because it's like, well, I kind of have to come along, otherwise I don't get to be with you because you're going. But I have my friends here, my circle, my job, everything of mine is here. And I notice sometimes for people it starts to waken up resentment or doubt, or am I giving up myself because I'm going? And I guess what I would love to ask you is, if you're the person who is back in the old place, how can you manage that conversation? Like, what are some things that you can say and do to engage your partner in that? Because, let's face it, that partner's ready to go, or they might have already gone. So what are some things I can do when I'm left behind in the metaphorical sense? How can I cope with that?
I guess before he even leaves the country, you've got to have conversation around, where are we going, in terms of the relationship, not just moving physically, but say, for example, if you're just together for like 6 to 12 months and you sort of compromising your own identity and move completely to a different country, you sort of want to know what the plan is with the relationship. Because otherwise there's, like I said, it's a big ask. And for a lot of women, if there's no, on paper, I guess, if there's no end goal, what's the point? It's like, it's good so long with, you know, being together and seeing each other. Another key thing to think about is, yes, you can have the phone call and the Skype, but when you move over there, think about the level of support you need. Where can you find the community, and, you know, whether you can find a job to be working over there, because you don't want to sort of be at home and be on alone while your partner's at work, because he has a life and you sort of feel like you don't. So you sort of think about more realistic, practical aspects of moving away from home. And I guess another thing to think about is just sort of the agreement of, okay, if you move, you've got to think about you moving for yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of just do it for the other person, because there will be a lot of resentment coming up over time, and you've got to have to be sure about that, about your decision.
I love that you raised that, because that literally just came up for me when you were talking about that. You know, you often talk, I love the relationship model you share about the A and the H, and how the A couple sort of lean on each other, which is not necessarily a sustainable thing, whereas the H couple stand pretty comfortably on their own. And I think in a long distance relationship, it becomes even more important to find that balance of what connects us and how strong are we on our individual sides. Because for most people, a relationship means that they want to be physically together and closer to each other at some point. Some people manage long distance just fine. This episode is probably not for you, but for your friend who's struggling a little bit. Well, it's just a fascinating topic, isn't it? It's just like, and it just wakens up so many things as well. So I guess what a lot of people might wonder watching this episode is, how soon can I have the conversation? Like, let's say you touched on it before. If you've only been together 6 or 12 months and the other person is going or has already gone or something, can you raise this conversation as early as possible? Like, what can I do?
I think it depends on each relationship and how open and honest they are with each other. Like, Ryan and I, when we first together, we talk about children and marriage. We're very upfront in the first few dates. And it's more about gauging the perspective instead of forcing the other person to be in a certain way. I think that's the key difference of asking them to commit to something versus gauging their perspective around, what do you think of, you know, for example, if you were to move overseas for your career, you know, how will we manage it and have fun in that conversation? Because then, you know, no one want to have the conversation of, let's have a chat, the serious conversation. So, and it's scary for me or for him to hear that. And so for a lot of guys as well, you know, career is always in the sort of the front of their mind. So you don't want to force him to choose between use and the career. Because no one's actually winning here. Because if he compromise his career and stay here, he'll be unhappy. He'll start resenting you. And if he compromise you, he'll still be unhappy because he might regret of not being with you. So it's sort of the lose-lose conversation. You sort of just talk openly and explore all the possibilities. And I guess the sooner you have a conversation, the more time you have to prepare for things. For me, I would have a conversation, you know, probably not in the first date, because you sort of scare the person away. But I guess, you know, when you start dating for like a month or two and you know that's coming up, it's important to have that conversation, and whether you are on the same page. Because if you're not on the same page and you know this, why bother making all these big compromise or sacrifice to still end up being exactly where you are? Probably worse, because you sort of feel alone over there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I mean, what I'm hearing here as well, which I think is a really important thing to raise, is to be really clear on your standards or your non-negotiables. So as a woman, you know, like you said, you guys talked early on in your relationship about children and marriage and where your stances were, like is that something you want or not? Because what I see all the time is people, they move overseas, whether they're with someone or not, and they don't accept the fact that it's going to be very different. And once they've landed, they realize how different it is. Or you know, once they started the long distance relationship, they realize how much it changes their relationship. So, I mean, what are some ways that I can then work out my non-negotiables as a woman or a man as I'm heading into this?
I guess it's quite obvious, you know, when you talk about non-negotiables, is think about the thing that you could not live without.
Yeah.
And at no time in your life that will be a negotiable. This is what I call non-negotiable. So I always know I want to be a mum. I wasn't, you know, I wasn't keen on getting married. So for me, that was a negotiable. Whether I get married or not, I don't really care. But for me, kids are important in my life. I want to have that. So have that open conversation around these are my non-negotiable. And if I met someone who do not want to have kids later on, I would sort of, I guess, get an understanding that this is where I'm at. We're not on the same page. That's cool. Wish you the best of luck. And so we come to, I guess, moving overseas, you know, what are your non-negotiables? For a lot of people, families. They never want to be away from the family. They just sort of want to cross a road, see the family on the opposite side of the street. So that is something you got to be open to talk about. And in honesty, I've done this before of compromising my non-negotiables. I ended up regretting the whole thing. So I guess just get clear on who you are and what you want in life. So not just dating together for 6 months, 12 months, but think about like 5-10 years time. If this really could be something, what will your life be like? For a lot of people, they're non-negotiable actually not be outside of Australia. I know it's a crazy thing. But if that's a non-negotiable and you compromise that, you start resenting the other person for making you do certain things that you're not happy with.
Yeah, I can relate to that so much. I've shared this with some of my viewers in a few videos. I had a long distance relationship for about 2 years. My partner and I had been together for about 4 years at the time. So we were pretty solid, and we knew that because of his work, he had to move overseas. And we ended up with a bit of a situation where I'd finished my studies in Sweden and I was going to go and join him in the UK. And the main reason for me doing that, in hindsight, was that I knew that he couldn't move. So either we kept doing long distance or I moved to him. And it was interesting because the emotions that woke up in me, the resentment that I'm doing this for you, how many times I used that against him.
Yep.
In hindsight, I feel really sorry for him, because what I did was that I said, well, I did this because of you, so you have to do this for me. And it became this sort of almost like this balanced game of who gave more to whom. And
so keeping the tally of, you know, I've done this
keeping the score pattern.
You haven't done that. Yeah.
You know, let's face it, that's bullshit, isn't it? One thing that I guess that all this sort of boils down to is that what I've noticed, and you probably have as well, is that in long distance relationships, it's really easy to start focusing more on the problem and what you don't have, rather than the love and the beauty and the great things that you do have. And without letting that cloud you and your non-negotiables and that sort of stuff. How can a couple who might have gotten a little bit stuck in the whole, you know, when are we moving? When are we going to, you know, when's this long distance situation going to end? When are we going to be able to be together again? If a couple's a little bit stuck in the whole moving forward thing, what are some things they can do to refocus away from the problem and onto, I guess, a solution and the love that brought them together in the first place?
I think there's no, you know, one-way answer to anything. And I guess I would encourage every couple to have an open conversation around how you really feel, suppressing the emotions inside. And, you know, you might feel lonely or upset or frustrated, and you need to discuss with your partner around how he can support you. throughout those time and have some agreement, or maybe you meet more often, maybe, and I guess more quality time, I guess, instead of, you know, a lot of couples when they're together, instead of appreciating the, you know, the hour they have on the call, they're just sort of bitching around work or other people that, you know, that frustrates them. Have a proper, decent, quality conversation where, like you said, being in the present moment and appreciate the time that you have, even though it can be little. But when you have that sort of connection, you do feel connected regardless of where you're at. And appreciate, I guess, you know, like you said, you know, think about why you first met and why you fell in love and why you're doing this. And think about longer term of, yes, we do want to be together. We're having hiccups here and then, but let's work through things. Let's work towards our goals of being together. And yes, there will be compromises, and that will not be easy on either side. But just think about that there will always be a tunnel, the light at the end of a tunnel. And so focusing on that positive aspect sort of help you alleviate from being stuck right here. Another way is actually a lot of the challenges that or emotions that come up are your own issues. So you've got to have to work through those issues yourself so that when you are together, you experience more happiness and, you know, joy and love.
Yeah. That's really fantastic. And I know that you've got some cool ebooks and stuff around, you know, questions you can ask yourself as well as ask in your relationship. So we're going to make sure to put up some links at the end of this video so you can connect with Jane and read more about her stuff over there. One thing I guess that I've noticed with long distance relationships, which is a really positive thing, is that it's different from a normal relationship because a lot of things come up a lot quicker. And whereas it can be quite turbulent and a lot of things come to the surface, they also show you pretty quickly if this relationship is going to work or not work. I've found when I compare a long distance relationship to a relationship where you live close to each other, is that things can kind of putter along for a long time. And in, you know, the regular relationship, things don't come to a head quite as much.
Yeah.
Whereas in the long distance relationship, you're kind of forced to deal with stuff earlier and in a more mature way, because if you don't, it's quite likely things are going to fizzle out and not really work. So I guess the positive spin on a long distance relationship is that you get to know each other really quickly.
Yep, definitely.
And you get the opportunity to be mature in the way you deal with it or not. But
then you don't have the time to fluff around. You know, you only have an hour on the call. You just got to go straight to the point and go, here are some of the issues that deal with it and move on. Instead of, you know, if you see each other so often, you tend to suppress, you know, some of the issues. You go, I'll talk about it next time or, you know, next conversation, versus if you only have an hour, let's get straight to the point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jane. This is a huge subject. We could talk about it all week, I'm sure. Thank you so much for your insights and your tips. And I'm definitely going to share a link to your page so that any viewers who want to read more about how to connect with their partner or with themselves, Jane's got some really fantastic resources on that. And thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been such an amazing conversation, and like we always do, we can talk for weeks. So I'm so glad that I get to share, you know, the insight and tips with a lot of your audience. And I know it also benefit, you know, not just your audience, but anyone who's thinking of or who wants to get into a long distance relationship and how to deal with, you know, the emotional, the mindset challenge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the final thing to leave people with in these sort of things is that, you know, ask for help, look for resources. If you haven't had a long distance relationship before, don't just listen to people who have. Find out what it means for you.
Yeah, definitely.
You'll have friends who've had horrible experiences and people who've had great experiences, and we're all unique, so we're all going to deal with it very differently. And I think that some of the tips you shared today will be very useful for a lot of people out there. So thanks again. And I'll see you soon.
I'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you, Jane, for an amazing conversation. I trust that you as a listener enjoyed that as much as we did. I would really encourage you to connect with Jane after the call via her website that you can see on the screen in front of you right now. She's got plenty of resources, including her beautiful book, that will really help you improve your relationships on your expat journey and beyond. All the best, and I'll chat to you soon.